Okay, so first of all, I've been in this industry too long. Literally, I was out tearing off 2 days ago. I'm 73 years old, going to be 74 the day after Christmas. I've been doing this a really, really long time, and it's different than most people in the industry because my stuff is hands-on. My experience, my warranty, all of that comes from that personal experience for so many years. I did write the curriculum, the original curriculum for the Colorado Roofing Association that started their education program and taught for them for 5 years before I moved away from the Front Range to the western slope of Colorado. And I wrote that with the concept that I use for my warranty, which is a properly installed roof should not leak. That's it. There's nothing else there, right? And the question is what happens if it does? I just fix it. That's what I do. So, in part, I know there's not a lot of us here, but I'd like to kind of make this more of a discussion, if possible. So chime in at any point in time. I'm happy to take questions, no big deal. This kind of a thing should be that kind of a conversation rather than, okay, yeah, there you go. So this should be a conversation, really. So don't hesitate. I'm going to ask you some questions. Please contribute. I admit there's not a whole lot of us, so you all get on, you'll all be on the spot. And it will talk about warranties in general, and then specifically lifetime warranties, and some of the things that I think are important to consider when you're going to do this, or if you're going to do this. So I assume if you're contractors that you offer a warranty of some kind. Even if you're a product, provider, there's going to be some kind of warranty, right? So the real question is why do we do this? Why do you have a warranty? Confidence in yourself? Yes. The client. So I think that's the biggest thing, that basically it's what your clients expect. It's probably one of the first things that ends up being asked in the midst of that kind of that process. When they're screening you for what you're going to provide, the client's going to ask you, what's your warranty? So that's the big part of it that's drawing it. If the clients didn't ask, I'm not sure a lot of people would be providing warranties, unfortunately. Right? So what kind of warranty are you an installer contractor? What kind of a warranty do you provide? 5 years. Titanium is a whole nother thing. I see your product, but there's still going to be some kind of warranty, right? And some kind of length to the warranty. Now, from an installer's perspective, warranties and the length of time is very personal to the owner. And, in essence, I've heard everything from 1 year to my insanity of a lifetime warranty, right? So why did you pick 5 years?
State of Montana only requires 1 year for contractor work.
Uh-huh. Okay, so that you said state of Montana only requires 1 year, and they wanted to do something more substantial for that. And so he does 5 years. Anybody else here have comment on that at all for yourselves? That's okay. Right? Depends on the system. But generally, people are going to pick a number. Okay? And like you said, Montana has one. You wanted something a little more, substantial, so you pick 5. Okay. I offer a lifetime warranty. I think part of it is because my dad instilled in me a level of ethic that I want to do that for my clients. We'll get into it, but the other part of it is that I have the knowledge base and the experience to be able to support that. Okay? So, my warranty is simply this: a properly installed roof shouldn't leak. And in most situations when I talk to people about this, when I say that, they shake their head and go, yeah, that's true, right? So, the rationale I use behind this is that everybody should actually be able to offer a lifetime warranty, right? Because if you have a limit, say it's 1 year, and I've had people tell me this when I went to go try and get a job at one point working for somebody else. And what they said was, they said, well, if it's going to leak, it's going to leak in the first year. So, that's the warranty and that's what they tell their clients. Well, if that's true, there's a logic that goes with that, which is, if it doesn't leak in the first year, or whatever limited warranty you choose, that you think it's going to leak in, and it doesn't leak in that time, then it shouldn't leak for the rest of the life of the roof. Right? Logically. Right? I say it's going to last 5 years, and if it doesn't leak in that time, then it should last for the rest of the roof. Okay? And to some degree, that's the way I think about it. Now, I want to be really clear about this. I'm not passing judgment on anybody here. I'm offering an alternative way to look at things, not to say that this is what you should do. Everybody has the perfect right to choose what warranty they do and how they stand behind it. So I'm not here to be passing judgment on anybody. I'm just offering an alternative viewpoint to consider. Okay? So anyway, that idea that if it doesn't leak within the time frame that your warranty covers, then you should be able to just be okay with offering a lifetime warranty. Okay, so my experience has been that for the most part, leaks will show up relatively soon if they're improperly installed. That's a given. However, little mistakes over time are the ones that are biggest culprits of trying to deal with this, right? You have somebody who has a good hand. Maybe it was a day that he just wasn't quite on it, He was in a hurry, had to get home to his family, had other things on his mind. And a tiny little mistake happens. And over time, 15 years down the road, I've even seen it 20 years, that I've come back to fix things. And I can tell that the leak has been going on for that long because nobody's touched the roof from day one. So much later in the life cycle, it'll show up if you have a problem, and it can. Okay, so my simple answer to this is, and it was really interesting because I provided my warranty to a lawyer who was consulting at one point in time for me, and I told him what my warranty is, and he about freaked out. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard." And then he called me up a few days later and he said, "Oh my gosh, this is like the most incredible marketing thing that you could possibly do if you can stand behind it." Because number one, nobody else is doing it. But more importantly, it's so simple, it's not caught up in legalese, right? If a leak occurs, I'm going to come and take care of it. And I do. I have. Not a whole lot, but I've been there. We are actually in the process right now of redoing an entire roof that got misinstalled. Not happy about it, but I'm doing it because that's what our warranty is. It was a lot easier for me because I spent a lot of time working for one of the largest roofing companies in Colorado for probably 10 years or so. And I was their sole repair guy. And I fixed more stuff than most people have put on. That was easily the best education I ever got in the roofing industry. It was really pretty amazing that I had that opportunity, and it gave me the chance to learn so much, right? Because every time there was a problem, they sent me out, I analyzed it, I figured it out, I put it back together. Additionally, what was interesting is they did a lot of stuff that was money-making repairs, where they'd go in and fix other people's stuff. And I was making about $3,000 to $5,000 a day. Not a week, a day, repairing roofs that they got paid for. One person, right, that can offset all kinds of problems that a company has if you do it right. Because there's plenty of roofs that are installed improperly in this world. Tons of them, right? If you get a repair program that's not just for your warranty, but can be money-making, it can be really money-making. It's huge. Okay, so this is really simple, and I'm just going to read it off. There's 3 reasons why leaks occur. The biggest one is that people just don't know how to do what they have to do. They haven't been educated. The second one is they just don't care. That can be a big one, you know, because now it's not so much in the metal roofing industry, but in asphalt, it's a matter of how fast do you get things done, you know? And it doesn't make any difference to a lot of guys how well they do it. It's just how quickly they get it done and get paid. And then the third one is really a combination of the two. They don't know and they don't care. That's been my experience. Okay, so I do want to return to that one little thing, which is we're here at a metal roofing convention. And I will say overall that the guys who install in the metal industry generally are a lot more careful. They have to be. There's demands of metal installation that require a better understanding, a more careful application of whatever it is that you're putting on. So that last one, you know, about them not caring and not knowing isn't as common in this particular part of the industry, because the nature of it is such that it has to be done in a particular way, and it's much more knowledge intensive that you can't just slap it on, you know, and walk away. So, how many of you use subcontractors to do your work? Is all your guys subcontractors? Okay, so you have some employees, all subs, okay? So that's a challenge, right? Because your warranty is based on somebody else's business and their ethic. So that's another part of this that can be challenging, right? Really common in the industry. There are a few companies that I know of who only work with employees. That's different, you know. That tends to, if you work with employees that are part of your organization, that tends to keep it, you know, in terms of quality, closer to home and easier to control. I would say most everybody uses a combination of the two, you know, some subcontractors and some employees. But, you know, if you're in that situation where you're only using subcontractors, that's a consideration in all of this. How many of you have actually installed? 1, 2? Okay, that's another component of this. How much time did you spend installing before you became the owner of the company?
Not owner, but that was when I realized I could manage work better than I could install.
Right. Okay, that's very common in the industry. As a matter of fact, when I wrote the curriculum for the Colorado Roofing Association, and we went to change hands because I moved to the Western Slope, we got all of these people who I was kind of going to ease them into being the educators. And we got some high-powered individuals who've been in the industry for a long time, as long as I had, right? And we had PowerPoint and we had hands-on, right? And they all came in and they were great. Every single one of them said, oh, I can do this. And they were talking about the PowerPoint. As soon as we got to the hands-on, they all freaked out because they had all stopped roofing 35 years ago, right? So they didn't really have the practical experience. I'm lucky or crazy, one or the other, right? Because I have that, Like I said, I was out roofing 2 days ago. I'll have to get some, actually, I'm just gonna put it in here quick. You can come by my booth, which is 7132. I have a shingle that I've invented that we're showing here. And you can come by and take a look-see at what we're doing. So that's a little bit of a sales thing here. So the reason I asked in terms of experience, hands-on, if you're gonna offer a lifetime warranty, you have to have enough knowledge to either assess or pick the right individuals who can do that for you, right? That's a little tough if you don't have the hands-on experience. So knowledge is what we're getting at, is really an important piece, right? Being able to recognize the problems before they become problems, right, is critical if you want to try and do this and offer a lifetime warranty. Now, again, I'm not saying that you have to, I'm not saying that you should. There's no judgment here about anybody. It's what I do, and I have a passion about it. I think it's a good thing to do. Imagine being able to go to a client, and when they ask you in comparison to everything else, you're going to be close in numbers to pretty much anybody else out there that they're comparing. And when they come to the warranty piece, you say, without any equivocation, I offer a lifetime warranty. And I can tell you, I sell probably 85% of my jobs. Part of it's because I can put people at ease. I know how to talk about roofing. I have incredible experience. I've taught it. So I treat it that way. But on top of it, I offer a lifetime warranty, and it's legitimate. For the life of the roof, you have a problem, we'll come back and take care of it for you. No questions asked. So the reason for this, and it's really important, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the industry. Like I said, the Colorado Roofing Association has a program for education. There's a whole section out here that's education-based, that's hands-on, so you can see how to use equipment and how to do things correctly. Education is critical. I think the next slide here, yeah. So it speaks for itself. We have always been a warm body industry. You get going and people are not there, and it's like you just want to have somebody show up so that your client isn't screaming in your ear about not having somebody on the job, or not having somebody on the job who knows what he's doing, and it's obvious because there's just stuff flying around all over the place. Part of that education component is your own, right? To make sure that you have the knowledge base within which to make decisions, even if you're not putting it on. That's not so important. I mean, it is, but from your managerial, position, it is really important that you have enough knowledge to be able to assess, one, who you're hiring, not just because they're a warm body and not just because they say they can do what they can do. You want to hire somebody, it's probably a good idea to have a mock-up that they can show up and they can actually go ahead and install. And it doesn't have to be the entire roof. It can just be underlayments and flashing, right? Because if somebody knows how to do that and you know how to assess that knowledge-wise, that's going to make it easier to pick whoever it is that you're going to have working for you, right? I jokingly say that you can do the flashings and the underlayment correctly and almost put the roofing on upside down and backwards, and it won't leak. Almost. Okay, so there are, like I said, there's the NRCA offers trainings. There's trainings going on here at MetalCon. Manufacturers want you to be able to be successful with their products, and they don't want to have people coming back after the fact chasing the manufacturer for problems that are going on. So they're going to do their best to provide you an opportunity to come get what knowledge you need, show people. They'll provide somebody to show up at your shop or do a training day at a supplier or whatever. So there's that part of it. The NRCA is doing their stuff. Colorado Roofing Association, I think Western States does that as well. There's a number of different education programs that you can avail yourself of to get the knowledge that you need, but then also to send your guys to and get them the knowledge, right? And you can do it in your own shop. Nowadays we have trainings about safety, and ladder safety and, rope safety and, that you do in-house because you're working on jobs that they want to make sure that you know how to do that stuff. Well, you can do the same thing with install as long as you have the people who actually know how to do that. So there's this education process that is tied to knowledge that is critical to be mentored, in the industry. And it will help in the long term of being able to, if you choose to offer not just a 5-year, a 10-year, a 15-year, a 20-year, or a lifetime warranty, Well, we've already talked about this part of things, which is, it can add expense. You can have to send somebody somewhere if you want to use a manufacturer, go to a manufacturer's facility. It may cost you to have somebody come in and train. But I will, I have to say it's good money spent in general. Especially education is everything. And I would add, especially hands-on education in this industry is critical. That's why we set up the Colorado Roofing Association's program was half PowerPoint and half hands-on. We had mock-ups. We did everything from installing underlayments and flashing, putting on asphalt shingles, tile, then metal. And metal was the last one because metal is the toughest to do. Right, so, there's in-house trainings are challenging, right? You have to have somebody who can do the training. They have to want to do the training. They have to have the inclination to share what they know, right? So we're getting into this part of things that has to do with how do you pick the right people to do what you need to have done. And I would say this is a really important piece, that temperament is huge. And that's not always the easiest thing to find in the roofing industry. That somebody's nice and calm and easy and relaxed, You're reactive quite often. There's a lot of anger. And maybe part of that's because they are a roofer, right? They think they could have been doing something better, but they haven't figured it out yet, right? I'm one of them. I'm still doing it. I'm not so angry though. I'm pretty easy temperament. Everybody says that. At this point, I'm so easygoing about stuff. It's like, okay, what's coming up next? And to some degree, that's a really important piece, because when you get into educating, and we'll see a little bit later who you pick to do your repairs, that's really important stuff. Temperament is everything. All right. And then it goes back again to the education piece. The last part of this is, do you have the knowledge to assess the right people? So your education is really critical, right? To make sure that you understand the process well enough to be able to decide who can do the work for you, who can do this education for you. It costs, I won't, make this just a simple thing. The commitment to choose to do a repair program and have a lifetime warranty takes a commitment to either pay somebody, and this is probably the biggest one, is paying somebody who's going to train somebody on the roof, who has to take time from when you're getting paid by the square, if that's the way it's working, then somebody has to take time from their production to have somebody with them. When I first got my son to work with me, he doesn't work with me now. He didn't stick with roofing, but I trained him, and what I did was I got him right next to me on the roof, right? And anytime we got into something difficult, I'd stop for just a second. I'd say, here's what I'm doing here. And then we'd continue up the roof. And this was doing asphalt shingles, not metal. So just a little caveat. But I had him within 3 months able to, I wouldn't call him quite a journeyman, but he was pretty damn close, right? And it was because I was able to put him right next to me and have him see what I did, right? Now, he was paying attention. Not everybody you're training is paying attention. So there's another component to it. But, again, this comes back to the temperament of someone who's willing to share what they know, and you're willing to find the way to make that worth their while if you have to, financially, because it's going to take time out of his production, to make it possible to train. So it's easy to just kind of not pay attention to this, right? But if you really want to make a commitment, even if it's just to your regular warranty, the one that you offer now, 5 years or 3 years or 10 years or whatever it is, that kind of a commitment will make the end result be really positive, right? And not to just set it aside and, I can say that to some degree, you can instill in your organization that kind of ethic that to some degree, I think people want to do this. They're just not encouraged to, Okay. Here's the really important part we're getting into. We're human beings. We make mistakes. Everybody does. You're not going to be free of leaks completely. It's just not going to happen. Again, what do? I fix them. Now, I have a knowledge base that is immense. I've been through some really strange ones that, and I will add to it, the one thing to remember when it comes to leaks, water is not magical or mystical. I want to be really clear about this. I've heard people make these kind of statements that say, oh, water, Water is a gravity-fed system. That is it. There is no other thing going on if you have a leak. it's easier for the water through gravity to go where it's going and getting in than to go where you want it to go. I had a roof. There was a beam in the middle of a dining room, and there was a post that held the one end of the gable of this thing, and all it was this big open space, and there was water dripping out just underneath the post, right? And I got up there and looked at the top of the ridge, and I went ahead and looked at the valley, and then it took me about 3 or 4 times going back there to try and track this thing down. And what had happened is the beam that the post was on ran all the way through the kitchen into the wall on the other side of the kitchen, and upstairs, outside of that, was a deck off the bedroom. And it had a parapet that was about 16 inches wide that ran into the wall. The cat metal that was on it was too small, but the guys put it on anyway, and so it went on and cupped, right? Snowed like crazy on the north side of the house, showed up come springtime. When it melted, what happened is they couldn't get it to fit by folding up the tab against the wall to make sure that the siding. So what happened is when it melted, it went in, dropped in the wall, got on top of the beam, which had shrunk, and created this wonderful trough on top of it that ran all the way across the building about 20 feet. And then it dripped out in the middle of the building. Every single bit of it was gravity fed. Looks like it's magical because it's coming from there over to here, but it's all gravity fed. So, you got to have somebody who knows how to do this. And so here's what I'm going to give you a little bit of clue about what I think you want to look for in someone who's going to do repairs for you and make your warranty something that you can stand behind and happily take care of. Okay? First of all, is that going to be you? Do you have the knowledge base and the experience to go out and take care of this? In my case, that's what I do. I'll go out now and assess it. Take a look at it, figure it out. If it's simple enough, I'll take care of it. If it requires more work, I will go ahead and direct my guys exactly what I want them to do and tell them specifically. Okay? But the challenge is that if you're going to do it, then it pulls you away from running your business. That's not always the best choice. Okay, so if it's not going to be you, then who is it going to be? That's the question that you got to ask. Remember, holding on to the knowledge that you're going to, if you don't have it, you're going to educate yourself in, you're going to make sure that you know so that you can go ahead and assess this person that you're going to put in charge of doing repairs for you. Right? They got to have the knowledge. You need to assess that and make sure that it makes sense. There's a lot of guys who promise that they know everything. But that's just what happens in the industry. And they have to be skilled in almost every type of material and application that there is, because that's what they're going to run into. Now, for warranty purposes, maybe you only do a particular type of roofing. I haven't seen many that do that, but maybe that's what you do, so it might be simpler in that way. But all kinds of roofs have all kinds of problems where they interface with different materials, so you got to know all of this stuff that's going on. They got to have a passion for it. Do they want to do this? There's sending somebody out who doesn't want to do the work is as bad as sending somebody up on a roof who doesn't know how to do something. Again, that goes back to the original statement we said it's either they don't know or they don't care, right? It goes back to that. They got to care enough to do it and want to do it. Because if they don't, they're just going to go up there. Now, one of the things that I said in my training with the Colorado Roofing Association was caulk does not a roof make. I've seen tons of guys go up and that's what they do. See the leak and they, you know. I've seen things that I've gone back to fix that are just so inundated with caulk that it's just outrageous. So keep that in mind. Caulk does not a roof make. As a matter of fact, technically, most of the stuff that we're doing is steep slope stuff, right? So it's water shedding. It's not waterproof. Waterproof is TPO or EPDM or low slope roofs. Those are waterproof. Steep slope is water shedding. And if you do it right, you don't need any caulk to do that. You don't. The puzzler part is really an important piece. You might find somebody who's comes up and he's constantly talking to you about, oh, you know what would be really neat? You know, if we could do da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you know, that he's got a creative mind that's looking for answers to try and figure out what might be a way to puzzle through a problem. That's the puzzler. You got to have somebody who's an investigator. He's a detective. He's curious and persistent. You know, it's one of those things that when you find the right guy, you'll know it. It'll make sense. You know, and you may already know him. He may already be in your organization, and you can already sitting here. You might have, oh, that sounds like Frank. You know, he's the guy that would probably do this really well, right? Because it's just in his nature. Yeah, this goes back. This was I hit on it earlier, which is there isn't something magical about water. Everything is gravity based. So that's what this one is, and I got to it sooner than I thought. But keep that in mind. You know, so if you can't figure it out, or somebody can't figure it out, push them again and say, listen, there's something wrong here that has to do with it's easier for the water to get in than for it to stay out. So one of the things that's a part of this has to do with the processes that you use, like when you're making transitions from one thing. One of the really big ones that I use an example of is when you're installing pipes. I personally don't use deck tights on my metal roofs. It's okay to, everybody can make that choice. I actually use a standard pipe boot with an OD, and when we cut around our pipes, we leave like a 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch channel for the water to move. Now, the tendency for a lot of guys is you want to cut it tight, make it really tight so it looks really cool. But the reality is what you want to do is you want to, in essence, you want to create a channel for the water to be able to flow. If you let the water flow where it wants to, it will go there. If you make it tight, then it binds up and dust gets in there, and then all of a sudden it starts to go sideways. So this is kind of in this idea of the gravity and making it easier for the water to go where you want it to than where it wants to go if you've cut things too tight. Oops. Let's go back. I got this wrong. Okay. Persistence. To some degree, roofers are built with this in them. In order to be a roofer, you got to be persistent. You know, you're working in the worst conditions and most of the time. What I say that there's only 2 good weeks out of the year for it to be a roofer, right? One in the spring and one in the fall, when the temperature is just perfect and everything is just right. And both of those weeks suck, right? The reality is being a roofer, roofers are built for this, right? If they've been at it for any length of time, persistence is what you want to find in the person, because lots of times they're not going to get the leak straight out of the gate, right? They have to be willing to be persistent. They also have to be willing to look at what they last did and recognize that that didn't take care of it, and be persistent enough to look beyond that, to puzzle through it and come up with an answer. Oops. I did it again. Patience. And this is a really big one, because they're going to be walking into situations where people are not happy. They are clients who have, maybe they've already been there and they're coming back again. They have to be able to go in with a smile on their face and go, I promise I'm going to work on it till we get it right. They have to be and they have to be patient, because they're going to see so many things that are wrong that other people have done that they see as being obvious, that it would really be easy to throw them off. So persistence, perseverance, and patience, tied to the knowledge of knowing what needs to be done and the investigative properties that it takes to be a really good repair person. Oh, I went backwards. Yeah. This is what I just talked about. So I encourage you to consider lifetime warranties as a possibility. I'm not saying you have to do it, but I do it, and I've been doing it for 35 years. I've offered a lifetime warranty on my work for 35 years. And everybody goes, what? All right? Consider it, but more importantly, the other parts of this has to do with the education component, the persistence, the investigative detective kind of quality that you want to have in somebody. That's an important piece no matter what your warranty is, because that's the person that not only will they take care of your leaks, but you can use them to generate extra income taking care of other people's leaks. Plus, you'll get known as being the company in your area that's taking care of people's problems. That's huge. That's a level of comfort, that word of mouth is really a big deal. And if you can get that one right, you're doing well. So, any questions? Okay, go ahead.
What's your piece on transferability?
Oh, mine's 100%. Mine's the roof is what I'm guaranteeing. I'm not guaranteeing the house or the homeowner or anything like that. So that's what I do. Yeah, I believe in that wholeheartedly.
What about proper ventilation?
There is all of that, and I will admit that's a challenge. The way the code's written, you can put twice as much exit as inflow. You should try your best to some degree using. I don't use synthetic underlayments personally. I order in ASTM 30-pound felt. I do ice and water shield at the eve edges, for specific situations, but I use ASTM certified 30-pound felt. I've developed a product that lets me install tar paper with a slap hammer, and it withstood a F3 tornado. So I can dry in and then wait for my metal to show up a week later, and we'll finish it up. So you had a question?
Others, for example, is there a leak you handle just stop the leak, or do you handle repairs inside of this?
No, I don't do the inside. Generally, that's covered by homeowners insurance. If it's small enough, I'll take care of it, because we do everything in my company. My partner is a former superintendent for a custom home builder, and so if we need to get it taken care of and it's simple, it's just easier to do. Just take care of it. Again, it's that thing of putting your clients at ease. But generally bigger things, I haven't had bigger things really. So that, to some degree, I really can't speak to it, so
not necessarily the biggest product.
No, ours is against leaks, right? So it specifically doesn't include anybody else's warranties, you know. Um, Ours is just, if you have a leak, I'll fix it for you. That's it. That's the lifetime no warranty. Yeah, which is our responsibility. I mean, you know, like I said early on, I don't know if you were here, but you know, I've seen leaks that show up 20 years after the fact, and I can tell that they were done wrong day one. Not a big leak, wasn't a bad installation. Overall, it looked pretty good, you know, but this tiny little problem showed up 15, 20 years later.
Different warranties in your contracts.
No, as a matter of fact, the a properly installed should not leak.
Do you have a legal document for your warranty? Or you just-
That's it. Yeah, I have a legal document. It says our warranty is based on, and it's one page of not legalese. It's not tiny little, you know, words. It's just, and you can probably find it on my website, dragonarmorshingles.com. If you can't, you can email me and I'll send it to you. So just so you can see what it is. Yeah, you bet. Anything else? Anybody got questions? We good? Thank you so much for coming. I wasn't sure anybody was going to show up, to be honest, except to see the crazy guy who offers a lifetime warranty. Right? So nice to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks.
All righty. Oh,
Say one more thing. Make sure you ask what you talked about. Yeah, see if we leave it to me.
yeah, we're in booth 7132. I should have brought some brochures with me. I forgot to grab them. We're right just past the metal fabricating thing here on the corner. It's called Dragon Armor. Okay, great. Thanks. All right.